too many movies. It could literally just be a state suing another state at the Supreme Court saying, invalidate those votes. Because these are built upon non-citizens who are influencing our government. Then you get a federal law. Let's say a federal law passes, narrow margins. And then you get a few red states arguing that due to the inclusion of non-citizens in the congressional apportionment, Democrats, by winning by one vote in Congress to pass a law that, say, would encroach on gun rights or free speech rights, violating the Constitution, and then a Biden or Harris signs the bill, they say, no, we refuse to enforce this under this ruling. It goes to the Supreme Court, which of course is conservative. They rule in favor of the red state. The Democrats then say something like, you see, this is Trump's stacked court, and they're now overturning Congress and the president. We can't allow this. And you get two sides arguing that they are morally justified in their use of force, to whatever degree that is. And then it could be starting very simply. Texas says, we will not abide by this national restriction or whatever. Texas, as we already saw with illegal immigration, then starts making moves to remove illegal immigration. Let's say the issue is illegal immigration. Texas was already in conflict with the federal government on the border, setting up razor wire and barring the feds from jurisdiction they claimed they had a right to. This is how things like this could start, where it's it's two cars speeding towards each other, and neither side has any means of resolving this. With a situation like Texas, which was scary, and this is only in the past year, Alaska is talking about sending down troops to aid the feds. Then you had a handful of states, even Florida, sending National Guard and State Guard to go defend Texas in Texas' assertion of a right over their border. You had the Supreme Court involved. When it comes to something like this, we are looking at dry tinder on the forest floor, and then you get CBP and federal agents demanding to be given access to a border they claim jurisdiction over, while the state is saying no, and we're laying razor wire, concertina wire, and then all it takes is one accident. Somebody not even flicking a cigarette, but a chain. This is actually a story that started one of the fires. A guy apparently had a chain hanging from the back of his pickup truck, and as he was dragging it, it was bouncing off the ground and sparking, and it lit tinder. There was no intention. So let's say something happens where it's late at night, it's 2 in the morning, and the feds say, look, this is our jurisdiction, we're going to do a patrol. State Guard or National Guard are down there, and they see some guys walking, and they're wearing polos and khakis or something. They don't know if they're supposed to be there, they're not in direct communication. Something happens and a bang goes off. Maybe it's a Mexican army or a cartel member opens fire or something. These guys don't know what's happening, so they draw their weapons. Both sides see two groups drawing weapons on each other with guns going off. They take cover, somebody shoots. It could perhaps even be a cartel member intentionally trying to spark conflict, but a National Guard member or a federal officer gets shot and killed. Then a guy who that's his best friend, who's been working with for 10 years, sees it happen and just starts opening fire. And this is where you get something nobody expects. It spirals out of control. Texas says, federal agents opened fire on our guards. And the feds say, they shot my friend. They were shooting at us. Does that resolve simply with, everybody calm down, we don't want to go this route? Or is it an escalation of tensions where they say, the feds come in and say, we're going to start arresting National Guard, everyone involved, you turn their names over now. The state says, we will not turn over the name of our guardsmen who are legally authorized to use these weapons when you were shooting at us. The state then says, we demand the feds withdraw, and you turn over the men who shot our names. Both say no. Do they back away? We have no idea. We have no idea. Now, I would say that seems like a 1 in a million or a 1 in 100 million, who knows? But you can imagine a scenario like that being dangerously close, when the only difference in that story that I just told and what literally happened is that the feds ultimately said we're gonna back down, everyone's gonna chill out. But imagine if an accident occurred, the flicking of a cigarette, the sparking of a chain, that wildfire grows rapidly, you can't control it. How about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand? One guy dying, igniting World War I.
But I would say they would calm down in that situation. Even when it looked at the situation with Texas last year with the border, or I think it was even earlier this year, with the wire fence, the Supreme Court didn't order Texas to remove it. It simply said the feds now have the power to remove it. And I think that Texas made it annoying to remove it, but they were able to remove it eventually. So Texas would not go up to that level for lethal violence, even when they send state guards, national guards, and state law enforcement. they're told you can't really use your weapons. You can just only monitor the situation.
No, they were,
I don't think
they were
the
actually they were told they could use their weapons in defense, and they actually fired across the border.
Only in defense. And even in the
point.
situation at the night, but they're not going. First off, I don't even think.
Well met.
Another vision.
And anyway,
You saw it too.
That situation happened,
They're
the state would
growing
take most of the blame,
stronger.
even nationally.
Let honor
That was
guide
really
your
bad
path.
for Texas.
Let's hope
And I would
Magni
support
has
Texas
some
in
answers.
this regard. But hopefully,
I
if
hear no
Trump
one's
is
seen
the
him for a
winner,
few
we
years.
no longer have to
He'll
worry
be
about the
there.
situation, 'cause Texas is
He
gonna
has
back
to be.
Federal immigration enforcement with Trump being the
All right. then let's talk about another scenario. The first thing I want to respond to that with is, no one thought the
If
First
this
Civil War
is
was going to
about the
happen.
visions,
Fort
I'm
Sumter
nae
wasn't even
interested.
considered the start of the Civil
Leave me
War.
alone.
The Battle of Fort Sumter, only one person died. It was an accident. After that battle
Azeroth
happened, the
needs
history
its
books have
speaker.
declared the Civil War hath begun.
And so do we.
Except the people of the United States still didn't believe it. And so when it came to the first Battle of Bull Run, they were picnicking. And they're like, there's no Civil War, nothing's going to happen. And then there was a massacre with, like, there's this famous drawing of the mayor frantically running. It's a drawing, there's no photos. And then people realized...
I'm
we are
speaking
in a-
for no one
In fact,
these
even
days.
at that point, they still didn't call it the Civil War. It wasn't until a couple of years later that it was called the Civil War. It was called a rebellion.
Speaker of Azeroth.
States or something like this.
She hasn't
So,
been speaking to me.
in the instance of something happening in Texas,
After all I
it may
gave,
be an
she
accident
left me
that
like
must take responsibility for.
this.
But even
And
then,
so,
if there's one
let's
accident
be
like
clear.
that, the history books
I'm
may say
doing
that
this
was the
for
moment
all
that
of
they
you,
decided.
not
Even if we here
Azeroth.
in Leeds don't see it as such. But anyway,
We
I digress.
survived.
Well,
The Nerubians
let's hear
will
from
not.
correct.
Control your power,
Donald Trump is going
or
to
it
implement massive
will
immigration
control
reforms.
you. Hopefully we can
Deportations.
revive him.
He says he wants to use
Meet
local
us in
police and
Dalaran when
military
you're
now.
able.
When I asked him, he said local police. Now he's saying we would use military to a certain degree. What do you think California does if Donald Trump sends in federal authorities to start going door to door, not just ICE, but expanding ICE and ordering local police and sheriffs and National Guard? I think there's a possibility that it starts here. Trump says we're deporting the illegal immigrants. They're not allowed to be here. They need to be here legally. And so he sends in ICE. California blocks it. Trump says we need the law
What have you done
of
to
the
yourself
federal
this time?
government to be enforced. As
Let's
such,
get to
I'm
work.
invoking my right
You are
to,
always
direct
appreciated.
the National Guard of California, which the law states, if the law
Well,
the federal law states
I'm
that if the
listening.
law is not being
Mind
enforced,
yourself.
the federal
You'll
government
likely
can assume
find
command of
Dagrin
the
with his
National
nose in a
Guard to
book.
enforce the
That's
law.
why he insisted
So
we come
then he
to
says to the
Dalaran.
California National Guard, you will go to these homes, you will take these illegal immigrants and load them into buses, get them on planes, and send them back to their home countries and processing centers. What if California says no? And then California, the governor, says to the National Guard, do not obey those orders from the federal government. You are California National Guard. You will not obey Donald Trump's fascist Nazi takeover. Is that a possibility?
I mean, it is a possibility, but we already had a situation like this play out in the 60s over integration. And when the National Guard was federalized, the government backed down. And I think they would do the same here. There's too much respect for federal
Have you seen these new
authorities.
tomes, Uncle
The state,
Bran?
even the national
They must be
state,
from Drenton.
compared
Hope
to the
Granddad's all
50s and
right.
60s is far stronger. And even in that
I never
scenario
got to
where
spend
you
much
talked
time
about
with
the
them.
Civil War, South Carolina had
Don't
already
worry,
seceded,
lad.
so had several other
Magni's
states.
made of stern stuff.
This was a foreign
pardon
country
me.
firing on the United States at that point. And everyone...
Fort Sumter was in South Carolina. So this wasn't...
But it was a United States military installation. So
Even
and
if
South
no one
Carolina was
here
no
will
longer in the
help
U.S.
us,
Already
we
declared
must
it was no
fulfill
longer-
our
not according to the
duty.
Union.
But if there's
But
any
it
chance
had
of finding
declared
aid,
itself, and it was another entity firing on the federal government,
It was
on
a-
the U.S.
According to the Union and the federal troops, it was a state-level entity attacking the federal authorities as one country.
But it had already seceded.
No,
South Carolina already saw
Not
itself as a
according-
separate country.
But to the Union, there was no such secession. It was
But that
not
marked the secession.
No, it didn't. The Union never viewed the southern states as having left the United States.
They were fighting to bring them back, but that bar...
No. They did not view them as separate. Tim is objectively correct here. The Union never looked at
The
South
Union
Carolina.
never saw them, but as
Aye, that's
actual
the one.
practice,
Shield
they were outside of
Hillitties.
it. But
There's
they were
no time
fighting
to
restore
waste.
them to the Union and bring them back into
Tyrosis.
fully
Now
in line with
he's
the
a
rest
good
of the
man.
There's an important the war,
Count
And
me
everyone
in.
knew that war was a strong possibility, and they were trying to avoid a fortune.
No, this is completely incorrect.
I'm glad
Let
you
me
could
interject.
join us.
Nobody
We
knew
will
that the war
prevail.
was going to happen. happened when
That's
the
can
why-
always count
that's
on
why
me.
They were picnicking
May
at
the
Bull
light
Run.
give
They
you
were
strength.
picnicking because they thought there would only be
Take
one
care of your
battle,
brothers and
they
sisters.
weren't
Not
We
true.
must
Yes, it
not
was.
forget the
They were not.
Ashburner.
When
Tyrion may be
when
gone,
war hap-
but the
they
High
thought that
Blade is
war-
still out there
when
somewhere.
The South started seceding,
Walk
there
always
was
in
this
the light.
desire to see what would happen, and they were hoping that the South would come back to its senses, that even the seceded states, that they would make these compromises, and that they would come back and avoid war. But once Fort Sumter happened, and both sides are raising armies and then sending them to Manassas.
They were not raising
that was,
armies. That is incorrect.
The South was absolutely raising armies. They were using their state militias and using that as Confederate.
Okay, we got to pause. That's not true. The Lincoln did not mobilize until after Bull Run, and only 7 states had seceded in the first place. It was after Bull Run, the mobilization that Lincoln tried to implement, that sparked 4 more states to secede.
No, it was Fort Sumter
Hello.
prompted the 4 others.
Farewell to ye.
You can look this up. No, it was the 4 others.
Since the
Wait,
defeat
Fort
of the
Sumter
Lich
was
King,
that, and Fort
I've
Sumter
spent my
then
time
began
around
raising
Ulduar,
Yeah, but how you-
learning about
I think,
Tyr.
like,
He was the
draft and
only
conscription,
Titan Keeper who fought
I'm pretty
Loken
sure that
during
happened
his
under
betrayal.
Fort Sumter, but that could have also
I
been-
found
they
a
were
very cool
utilizing
saga
both
describing a
of these-
powerful
both
shield
sides were utilizing
Tyr
the state
crafted for
militias
his
and
very
what troops
cool
they could
champion
find
to
and deploy
carry
them
into
out in the
battle.
battlefield.
I stand
I
corrected.
have
It was
some
3 days after
ability
Fort
to
Sumter,
speak
Lincoln
with the
mobilized
long
to
departed.
send troops.
We
We're not
may
taking
be able to
secession.
question the hero in this saga directly.
I guess we're arguing over the original Civil War, so we
Aye,
should go into the
that's
feudal
my
war.
hope.
The point is
With
that
your help,
people
we have a
did
chance
not
of
think
finding
a
this
war had begun,
artifact.
Yeah.
even after Fort Sumter.
Yeah, Tim's right here. I basically completely agree with the things Tim said.
But I was wrong about
What do you mean that a war had
How
begun?
are you
They-
doing?
I mean, violence.
See
had
ya
erupted.
around.
nobody died.
People were massively coped.
They were firing cannons.
The tower in the middle of Dalaran has a
portal
portal to Wormrest Temple. Should get you most of the way there.
Resources from this time period,
Now,
and Tim
thanks
is right,
again
where
for helping
people
us paladins.
Didn't think the war was happening until
You
way past
asked the
point they were already
Sunwalkers
in
for
it.
aid.
There
Well,
was
they didn't think
And
it was
I've
gonna be a
come.
long war. They thought that
May
one
my
battle
presence
would
bring
solve the
success
whole
to your
matter.
quest
But they
story.
didn't even call it the Civil War for a couple years.
Yeah, but it was a war, and it was by the end of 1861. Several people had died, and everyone knew that this was a war.
So if you look at the Democrat platform and then you look at the various political politicians, the various positions the politicians had, there was tremendous coping about the war until pretty far in, where people would say, oh my God, the South's going to back down. It's all the things you just said. The South's just doing this for attention. The South, this isn't a real conflict. This is just a constitutional crisis. And then it kept
You
spiraling
made
and
it.
spiraling and spiraling.
It's true,
This
but
man
Fort Sumter
haunts
was
me
the break in
still.
saying, oh,
So
shit,
much
this is
I'm
pain.
unclear how this relates to the point we're trying to
Well,
convey, though.
let's get on with it.
I was going to say that I agreed with Tim's point that these, you have gasoline and then there's a
Greetings,
match,
friend.
and it's unclear what the match is going to be. But there's
Another
always has
time
to be a
then.
match.
But the match can be innocuous.
Exactly.
It can be such a small and mundane thing that under normal circumstances doesn't matter.
Yes.
Let's say you have a rainy fall and a guy starts chucking M80s and is flamethrowering all across California. No wildfire can start. But you get a dry summer and someone can accidentally, maybe they're driving their car and they get a flat tire and their tire rips off and then it scrapes on the ground, sparking, the whole thing goes up.
I'm laughing because the first thought that came into my mind is Mr. Beast making a video. I started the California wildfire.
And his mouth
I
is
started the Civil War in California could maybe be his next video. But even on that, I mean, we did with the
We
conflict
have
between
found
federal
you,
and state
and
authorities,
you
we didn't have that
have found
in the
the
50s and
grave.
60s
What's
over
the next
immigration
step?
and the federal authorities not
I will
having.
begin
Even
the
states
ritual.
could call upon
Focus your will
mobs
upon
of
the
violent
spirit,
young men to
while
side
our
with them,
friend
even in the
keeps us
case of-
safe.
in Ole Miss in 62
Let's
when they
get
were trying
to it.
integrate And at Little Rock, they had not just the National Guard and state police, they also had these mobs. And I don't think California would have, the type of
to ease the pain
imposing
of my
mobs they had in
failure.
Ole Miss and Little Rock
Why
aren't
do
going to
you
be
disturb me?
the middle-aged cat ladies
I've
who are going to
read
come out
your
to prevent
saga.
people from
Where
enforcing
did you
criminal
find the
litigation.
shield?
So we'll pause here, and I'll say
It seems you
this
compel me
it's
to
interesting
answer.
entertain
My
the
journey
similarities
took
between
me to
1860.
Stormheim,
Technically, you go back
to a
the
tomb of
1810s, you go
warrior
back to
kings.
1820 when they were already
There,
discussing Civil War.
I found
In
the
fact, there was already
shrine to
contention
Tyr's
inside the
champion,
Declaration of Independence
but
of
was denied entry.
You look at that, and
I
what you have is
tried many
sovereign
times,
states with a weak
until I
federal
could bear
union,
the pain
and when
no
they
longer.
decided the federal union was going to go
I
against the
returned
states, what
in
was stronger.
disgrace
That is not typical
and
of any
sought to
civil war
wash
ever.
away my
That is the
failure
United
in the
States
blood
has
of
sovereign
others.
states effectively in a large
We
scale
will
war, which is
finish
kind of
what
like,
ye
more
started.
like Europe than anything else. If you take a look at
Return
Spain
to your
or Russia,
rest and be
a tiny, tiny
disgraced
fraction
no
in key
more.
areas uses Von Steve's control
Thanks for
from
your
a-
help,
from a rather
Tarhu.
apathetic
I won't
general
forget
population that
this.
doesn't want to be involved.
It was my
And so
honor
what we
to
see here
serve.
is, it may
I must
not
go
be,
to Netherlight Temple
it may
and
be that
inform
it's
the
our bias
conclave of our
1861 that we
success.
say maybe the feds will come and attack
As for
Trump
us,
will try and
we
enforce
should
a
get
mass
back to
immigration
Dalaran.
thing, then a
I'll
state
meet
like,
you there.
we saw this in 2020 when Democrats ran a war game where they actually entertained West Coast states seceding from the Union if Donald Trump were to have won in 2020. That was Boston Globe reporting. They literally got like John Podesta was hanging out with these other big uniparty neolibs and neocons being like, okay, if Trump wins, we're going to need Oregon, Washington, California to secede from the Union unless Donald Trump guarantees constitutional reforms and things like this. So that conversation was happening. It's kind of crazy, but I think it's largely due to our biases that we think that's how things would play out. I think it's entirely possible that what we end up seeing is more like Chaz Chop level times 10 times 100. So we actually had a period in this country where for a few months in the Pacific Northwest, there were autonomous zones set up to the point where they had armed guards, they had taken over a police department, kicked out the local police force, surrounded that, and were in control for a couple of months and actually murdered people, actually killed people. Then you have the Atlanta autonomous zone. Same thing, they torched the Wendy's, took it over, people were killed there. There were shootings. Yeah, I know, the Wendy's autonomous zone is, but you know what's funny is,
No Wendy's.
it seems crazy to us, but this would be like saying, I don't know, people may get offended by this, but the Alamo, right?
Yeah,
a singular building that seemed,
Good
taken over.
hunting.
Granted, Wendy's is a chain of fast food.
Remember the Wendy's.
So
Now here's the important thing real quick. The Minnesota George Floyd autonomous zone was up for I think 2 years,
damn.
where George Floyd Square was occupied to the point where there was a guy on a rooftop with a rifle
Yeah.
that people had reported seeing all the time, and there was nothing stopping any of these people from taking this territory. Now, we may look, maybe nothing happens. You know, fair point on the civil rights movement. Many people thought this could lead to a second civil war. There's also, I think it was 1876, where they thought the Civil War was going to erupt again. They had the corrupt bargain. It didn't happen. We said, guys, we're not going to let it get that far. But today what I think is different is we have militant extremist factions that have already taken over portions of cities. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere, or maybe after Trump wins, they flood these cities. If you get a state like, look, when they say, when the vice president gives a press conference where she says Donald Trump is a fascist and he is Hitler, the message being sent that a lot of Republicans think is she's saying be violent or something like that. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think she's saying you, as an individual, must take individual action to stop Donald Trump and Republicans from gaining power in any way you can. Which means, I am not concerned about a Democrat cabal or the deep state funneling in 10 million fake ballots in the middle of the night. That's stupid. What I'm concerned with is 10,000 random regular people working polling locations, looking left and looking right, and then crumpling up a Trump vote, throwing it in the garbage, and being like, oops. But that happens 10,000 times. That could actually shift an election in one of these key swing states, and there's nothing you can do because one individual tossing a handful of ballots is a oopsie daisies, but it happening 10,000 times is an irreconcilable conflict. Something like that could happen, and then you need only the progressive left, which makes up a small, I think 8 to 10% of the Democratic Party are the estimates, and they hate Israel, and they're going to be looking at a choice between pro-Israel and pro-Israel. They might say, Donald Trump, okay, that's it, we're out. We're autonomous zoning. And then you get urban level conflict, which is a civil strife period, perhaps. Like you were saying, Rudyard, that there could be bombs going off in Chicago. How do we get to 1,000 dead by April? Me, I kind of feel like that might be a little over the top. I don't know if we're anywhere.
1,000 is really low for a war. It could be way worse.
But I'm saying is like, I don't know that we're at the point where we have enough tinder to spark the war in the immediate, but I could be totally wrong. I think maybe it's just normalcy bias or optimism bias where I'm like, I think there's got to be periods of, there's got to, you know, we had a caning in the Senate, and it wasn't even immediately after that people were fighting. We had 7 years of bleeding Kansas. This could ignite the bleeding Kansas phase, I suppose. That being said, before Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated, 7 states seceded from the Union. It may just be the fact that this election is so contentious, groups instantly rise up saying, we will not accept this,
Yeah.
and you immediately move into that pre-Civil War phase.
I can explain the exact context for why I think it's going to happen now, but I'll need to talk for a little bit because it's multiple points. So the first one is what I described before, that the Republicans can't handle another 4 years of Biden because inflation and immigration. The Democrats in the reverse, and this is one of the big things that got me onto thinking that we're going to have a war is the left has burned through all of their social capital and they have no backup plan. This is one of the things I've been studying for years, and it's bizarre. You look at the leftist-owned organizations like Disney, like California, like, I don't know, half a dozen other things
All of
in media.
California.
Exactly, yeah.
The record labels.
Yeah, California is
Colleges.
to states what Disney and Bud Light is to businesses. And the Democrats have burned through all of their social capital, and whenever I look at leftist institutions, I am completely shocked at their incompetence. And the problem is they've boxed themselves into a corner, and I find the Kamala situation to be beautiful because the left is eating their own grave, where they dug their own grave, and now they're forced to... Yeah, I realized that went poorly. I was going to say eat crow, and I changed the metaphor.
Eat dirt.
Yeah, so they're eating their own grave, and they have no better plan. And the problem is they're controlled by insane DEI hire radicals. In fact, just as an example, the fact that Boeing is operating off DEI hires is an example to me that things are about to go to head, where because if the left was purely cynical, they'd think, oh, the industries like DEI and the medical industry will keep the competent white guys in there. But no, they genuinely believe this stuff. So it will cause social breakdown. So the Republicans have that issue. The Democrats are in a problem where they've cut out all dissenters, and at the same time, their institutions are dead and can't survive. So the left will want to start a war as a way to get out of their own internal issues, which is incredibly common historically. So that's one angle of it, the right and the left self-interest. The other angle of it is that the average American is careening very close to bankruptcy now. And if you look at the average American savings, they built them up during COVID and they're about to hit bankruptcy. And the economic issues, the thing that I can't overstate on every single one of these podcasts is how completely miserable the average American is. Economically, socially, on a variety of different metrics. And about 20% of Americans are doing better, 80% are doing vastly worse. And I don't think the average American can sustain another 4 years of this. And it's going to keep piling up, and there's not going to be a solution until there is a war, because the problems that make life so hard for the average American are, I'm going to make a video how boomer bureaucracies are destroying America. Because I think the most dangerous thing to America in the West is the creation of these boomer bureaucracies that just consume everything as they continue to try to support the boomers without the population structure they were invented with. And so you have the right and the left in positions of desperation, you have the average American in positions of desperation, and also we just have no cards left as a society. We've burned, so let's say you had a horrible breakup and you're drinking to get over the breakup, and then you become an alcoholic. That's what we are. Where we've every single short-term strategy we would have done, whether money printing, whether burning old social, because we don't make new movies, we don't make new music, we burn through all of our old social capital, and now there's no good new movies or music. So we burn through all of the cards we would use to delay this, and I frankly think over the period we're talking about right now, so many Americans have been pushed into poverty and bankruptcy that they're just going to say YOLO, and I want there to be a civil war because that way there's going to be a debt jubilee.
Well, so I asked our good AI friend to make the average...
What's up? Have a good one.
We are now below 2014 levels
Yeah.
as of today. But it's not. What's interesting to me is not that it's comparable to 2014. It's the massive drop off
Yeah.
from 2020 to 2020. That's 2023 existing data.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because okay, well we're only as bad as we were in 2014, right? But imagine how someone feels, and feelings matter more than weapons.
The thing that doesn't cover is cost of living, where cost of living has skyrocketed since 2014.